Hi everybody, my name is Danielle Nicole and welcome to Monetary Makeup. You guys, I'm so excited. You know I'm all about quick, easy makeup. So Patrick Ta just came out with a brand new foundation powder duo. So this is called the Major Skin Cream Foundation and Finishing Powder Duo. Now this packaging is super reflective, so hopefully I don't blind you guys by the light, so to speak. But I did pick up two different shades that I'll be testing out today. Now this foundation is marketed for normal, oily, and combination skin, and I do have oily skin, so I'm super excited to test this out. Now this video is not sponsored, and I did purchase these foundations myself, so if you're curious just like me to see how this foundation performs on my 30 plus skin, and you enjoy the video while you're watching, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, and let's get started right now. Now, I apologize that I have been a little MIA over the last week. It is the first week back to school, so it has been a little bit chaotic around here, but we're here now, so let's get started. So let's first go over a couple of quick details about this new foundation. Now, while this is a beautiful, very, very reflective gold packaging, unfortunately, I do find it picks up fingerprints quite easily. Now, this product retails for $52 US, and you get 12 grams of foundation and 9 grams of finishing powder. It does come with the infamous top flap to protect any powder from getting into the cream product. Now, as I mentioned, I picked up two different shades. The shade on my left is a shade 1 Fair, and the one on my right is a shade 4 Fair. Now, I didn't find the undertones to be particularly confusing. I am almost always a cool undertone. However, as far as the depths of the shades, they were pretty difficult to tell online. So I just wish more brands would include swatches, especially of their foundation and complexion products. Especially with cream foundations, they can be really deceptive for how they look in the pan versus how they swatch on the skin. The disclaimer on the back reads, "Get flawless coverage with a luminous skin-like finish in one compact. A velvety cream foundation blends seamlessly to perfect the complexion and blur imperfections, paired with an airy translucent setting powder to soften, diffuse, and minimize the appearance of pores." Now this foundation is specifically supposed to be great for large pores. I am all about that. I definitely have large pores myself. I am very acne prone. I have oily and dehydrated skin. And if you do see this bump right here, I unfortunately got bit by a mosquito right underneath my eye. So we'll see how good this medium coverage foundation covers it up. Now I'm kind of laughing about this. I also ordered Charlotte Tilbury's new powder to test out for you guys. So I will be doing a review of this powder very soon here. But I was so excited because Charlotte finally came out with a powder that was light enough for my very fair skin. So when I held up these two powders side by side, I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up on camera, but Patrick's powder, it is almost pure white. Now, I'm not going to complain because typically powders are not fair enough for my skin, so we'll see how this white powder ends up working on my fair to light cool undertone. Now, before I dig my fingers into this product for swatches, I just wanted to show you up close what these two different shades look like. So again, on my left, the one right here is the shade Fair 1, and the one on my right is the shade Fair 4. All right, it is swatch time. Now, I don't know if the powder is going to pick up on camera, but I did swatch both the powder and the cream foundation. So the first two swatches right here are the shade Fair 1. So here is the foundation. And the second set of swatches are the shade Fair 4. So there is a pretty big jump, in my opinion, from the shade Fair 1 to Fair 4. Now, I realize this is not going to pick up on camera, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But when it comes to the powder specifically, I am noticing a white cast for sure on the shade Fair 1, whereas the shade Fair 4, it does appear to have a little bit more of a cream tint to it. Now, because this foundation is a cream and not a balm, it is actually reminding me more of the new Wayne Goss Cream Luxury Foundation, and that happens to be one of my favorites. So I am actually going to swatch these foundations on my skin. I do find that to be really helpful when I'm watching reviews, so let's do that first. All right, so dipping into the shade Fair 1. So here's the shade Fair 1. All right, I apologize if there was a little jump cut in this portion of the video. My daughter came out and needed something, but anyways, this was the shade Fair 1. So I do feel like this shade is actually too fair for me. So let's see what the shade Fair 4 looks like next. All right, so let's see the shade Fair 4. You know, I have a feeling that I am probably going to be in between these two shades, but let's see. All right, so here is Fair 4. All right, so do you guys see what I mean about there being such a big difference from the shade Fair 1 versus Fair 4? Now, what I will say, the shade Fair 1, it is definitely a very fair shade, so I am excited that there is a fair shade in this collection. I do think the shade Fair 4 is probably going to be a better match. All right, so I'm just going to take my damp sponge and kind of wipe this away here. So I'm actually thinking, let's use the shade Fair 4 on the skin, and then I will test out the shade Fair 1 on the under eyes like a concealer. Dipping in with a damp sponge. Now I realize that I am not going to get as much coverage because I am going in with a damp sponge, but that's just my preferred method of application. I have a lot of dehydration around my nose and mouth, so I just prefer a damp sponge over a brush. So we'll do the left half first and then do a side-by-side comparison here. Now I'm actually pretty surprised. I do think the shade Fair 4 is almost a dead-on match. It might be just a hair too dark for me, but I don't think it's enough that you would notice. All right, going over my mosquito bite right here. Those suckers are relentless, let me tell you. Now this is supposed to be a medium coverage foundation. And you know, even though I am using a damp sponge, I would definitely agree with those claims. This is certainly more than light coverage, and keep in mind I'm using a damp sponge, so far this is looking pretty nice. All right, so I have no foundation on my right side, the shade Fair 4 on my left. What do you guys think about how this is looking so far? So immediately I am noticing that it covered that mosquito bite really nicely, and I only went in with one layer. You can see some of my breakouts peeking through just a bit, but I would much rather have that than have cake face. All right, so let's apply the foundation to the right side. So dipping back into shade 4. I am actually quite impressed with the coverage of this foundation, and I typically do like medium coverage because I find it provides enough coverage, but it doesn't look cakey. All right, so this is what the skin is looking like now that I've applied shade 4 to both sides. So I have no idea what other people feel about this foundation, but as far as what I am seeing, this foundation looks so freaking good, you guys. I feel like it gives a nice, beautiful skin-like finish. It doesn't look dewy, it doesn't look matte, and I feel like the coverage level is just right. It covered up all of my acne spots and mosquito bite, everything like that really well. But what I am noticing is the pores, you guys. I have huge pores, okay? I've got some big pores, especially in my T-zone. This makes those pores look so smooth. So I just brought you guys in up close, that way you can see for yourself what my skin is looking like. So what do you guys think? This looks so beautiful. I cannot get over how it did such a great job at covering my blemishes and that darn mosquito bite that will not go away. So I feel like it provided enough coverage to not emphasize any of those spots. It doesn't look cakey. Overall, my skin just looks so smooth. And not only that, I have some large pores, as I mentioned, especially in my T-zone. And keep in mind, I also only applied one light layer with a damp sponge, but I just cannot get over how beautiful this foundation looks so far. All right, so far off to a great start. So next, let's dip into the shade Fair 1 for under the eyes. Now I am going to use a brush for underneath the eyes. This is the Rare Beauty concealer brush, one of my favorite concealer brushes of all time. I just don't want a damp sponge to remove any of the foundation I've laid down so far. All right, just picked up a bit of the shade Fair 1. Now it is probably going to remove that spot right there, which I can recover with this shade Fair 4. So we'll do that in a minute. This is the perfect shade for underneath the eyes. I just think this shade would have been way too light even for my fair skin. And I'm picking up very minimal product. I like to work in sections and build up if needed. You know, this blends out very quick. You guys know I am all about quick, easy makeup. So far this is not taking a lot of time to blend out. All right, this is blending out very beautiful as well. I am so excited for the wear test. I really hope this holds up. All right, so just zoom you guys back in so you can see what the shade Fair 1 looks like underneath the eyes. So what I will say is that these shades are dead on matches for me. You know, that's why I really wish all brands would include swatches. Even if they're not live swatches, any swatches would be very helpful. Now, when I initially saw the shade Fair 4, I thought this shade was just going to be way too dark for my skin tone, but I do think it is almost a perfect match. Now, the shade Fair 1, it definitely does work very well for underneath the eyes as concealer, but I'm not the biggest fan of using this product as concealer. Now, I don't think this product looks bad as a concealer, at least so far in the game, but there's just other concealers that I would probably reach for over this foundation. All right, so next we are going to move on to the setting powder. So just one last look at how my skin is looking before we apply that product next. Now, real quick, before I go in with either of these setting powders, I do just want to mention that I am very particular about my setting powders. And that's just because not only do I have oily skin, but I also have dehydrated skin. I always talk about this, but I think it's really important because I have so much dehydration around my nose and my mouth. The way I can tell if a setting powder or any powder in general is going to work well for me is if it clings to those dry patches in the T-zone. Now, I am curious about this powder, so I am going to test it out. But in general, what I typically reach for over any setting powder is the Danessa Myricks Balm Powder. Now, if you haven't caught my review of that product, that has been an absolutely game-changing product for me. So I actually use that product as a setting powder. Now, I know that product is basically a balm, but I just find that the way it controls my oils, blurs the skin, and sets the skin, there's just nothing else like it on the market. But I'm not going to go in with the Danessa Myricks Balm Powder today because I do want to test these powders out for those of you that do set the skin with traditional powder. All right, I am a little bit scared about this powder that is in the shade Fair 1. I mean, you guys, look at how white this powder is. I don't think I've ever seen a setting powder that's in a press format that is this fair. So let's dip in using my Wayne Goss number 3. You know, it's kind of difficult to tell if I did pick up any product because it is a white powder on white bristles. Now, I did tap off my brush, so if I have to go in with more product next, we can do so. So let's just set the right under eye first and see what it looks like. All right, so I can definitely tell that there was powder on my brush. I just feel like it took down a little bit, I don't want to say of the dew of the foundation, but it just took away a little bit of that shine. So no setting powder, setting powder. All right, so let's set the left eye next. Well, I would say it looks pretty nice for underneath the eyes. What do you guys think? But the one thing I'm nervous about, I'm just not sure if this would provide flashback or not, just because it is so fair. So that's the one thing I'm just not sure about. All right, next let's dip into the setting powder in the shade Fair 4. Just gonna tap this on the nose to get started. All right, this is looking pretty good so far. I'm not noticing it clinging to any of my dry patches in this area. The nose crease, it's just one of those problematic areas for me. But so far, I actually think this looks pretty nice. All right, so let's set the rest of the skin using the same powder in the shade 4. Now, I am actually a damp sponge kind of person when it comes to setting powders, but I know that is not what most people probably do, so we're just going to use a brush today. You guys, this powder, it looks beautiful. I am so shocked. I went into this expecting the foundation to work okay. I don't know why, but I think just because most powders just don't work on my skin type, but this looks really nice. You guys, I am so freaking excited at how good this product looks on my skin. Now, I know makeup is subjective. What works for one person may not work for another and vice versa, but I am just blown away, and I don't say that too often, especially with powders. Not only do I like the foundation, but I also love the setting powder. But now comes the real test. I will see you guys in a couple of hours, and we will see how this foundation and powder duo is holding up. So I'll see you then. Hi you guys, so it's been about 5 hours since you last saw me. So before I get into my final thoughts about this new foundation powder duo, let me first zoom you in and show you what my skin is looking like. Now, I realize it hasn't been a full 8 or 10 hours. However, I can usually tell how a foundation is going to perform after about the 3 or 4 hour mark. So let me just say, this new Patrick Ta foundation and powder duo, it just looks incredible. Overall, I just think my skin looks so smooth, so blurred, and yes, my oils have started to come through, but I will say I don't feel like I look overly oily. I just feel like this foundation did such a great job at smoothing and blurring the skin. I don't look excessively oily despite my oils that have started to come through. Overall, I just feel like my skin looks almost as good when I first applied it. So I would definitely agree with the claims with this being a medium satin to natural finish foundation. Now, as far as other cream or balm foundations that this reminds me of, first off, I would say when it comes to the KVD Good Apple, that foundation is definitely much more hydrating. And the Wayne Goss Cream Foundation, that one is a little bit more matte than this one. So beautiful, nice, natural, medium satin finish. Don't look overly oily. It didn't emphasize or stick to any of my dry patches. And this foundation really shines with the smoothing and blurring effect to the skin. Now, I don't know what other people's experience has been with this foundation, but as far as my experience, absolutely love this, and I'm so excited to continue wearing it. Now, I do think this foundation looks beautiful on its own, but I do have to give credit to this pressed powder. I went into this expecting not to like it just because I am so picky when it comes to my foundations, but especially the powders. This powder did such a beautiful job at blurring and smoothing the skin. So now I want to hear from all of you guys down below. Have you picked up this new Patrick Ta product? Have you tested it out? If you did, what was your experience? Let us know all your thoughts down below. Well, I really hope you all enjoyed today's video. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye, guys.